Hello all. Today we'll go over common Scrum terminology, and I am here right now with the scrum.org, and this is the glossary of Scrum terms. We'll go over in alphabetical way the way the site represents here. Let's start with the burn down chart, the letter B. So burn down chart is nothing but when you start a sprint, you first select certain stories. Let's say you selected 5 stories, and then each stories, for simplicity, I'm just saying each stories are 5 point each. So you have 20 point stories in your sprint. Now, every time you complete or close a story, then you actually burn your effort. So it is kind of a step diagram where every time you close it, your total remaining amount of stories will be less. So first you have 25 points, you close one story, you got 20 points, then you close another story, you got 15 points, like that way. At the end of the sprint, you will come to zero, which is left behind. So that is the burn down chart. Burn up chart is the other way. The chart shows the amount of work which has been completed. So it is the burn down chart, it is when you are closing the amount of chart it is remaining, whereas burn up chart, it shows amount of work it has completed. So it will gradually go up as you come end of the sprint. Coherent or coherence, it is not that much of use, but this is a quality relationship between the certain product backlog item which may make them worthy of consideration as a whole. Then the daily Scrum. This is a Scrum event. Every day, all developers, they attend the daily Scrum and they discuss what is their challenge, what they're going to do, and what they have accomplished for that particular day, or actually before the day. So definitions of done, this is very important because this ensures the quality. Every organization should have a definitions of done. If it is not, then Scrum team decide the definitions of done. It includes but not limited to any kind of unit testing, regression testing, the best process or best standard followed. Those things should be done or part of the definitions of done. Developers are everyone who are actually working on a sprint. So in Scrum, they do not define anything like a tester, architect, or business analyst, those roles. So anyone who is working in a Scrum team are the developers. Emergence, the process of coming into existence or prominence of new fact or new knowledge of a fact, of knowledge of fact becoming visible unexpectedly. So it emerges, like the word emerges, same as emergence. So you are emerging a new story or new task as you understand more. Empiricism, it is very important from, at least from the exam perspective, if anyone is interested for a certification. So empiricism has 3 pillars. It has transparency, inspection, and adaptation. So process control in which only past is accepted as certain and in which decisions are based on observation. So you can take a decision based on the past performance or observation. Engineering standard, a shared set of development and technology standard that developers apply to create reasonable, releasable increment of the software. F is for forecast, the selections of items from the product backlog developer deems feasible for implementations in a sprint. So whatever that you select in a part of the sprint to deliver, that is actually your forecast. I is for increment, Scrum artifact that defines the complete and the valuable work produced by the developers during the sprint. The sum of all increment from a product. So every time you just release complete a sprint, you should have one increment for the product. Product backlog, a Scrum artifact that consists of ordered list. So whenever the product owner talks to business or talks to the stakeholder, he finds that what can be improved to give a value for the product. Whenever product owner finds a value item, he or she goes to the board or actually the Jira or any tool that you are following. It can be an Excel, whatever, it does not matter the tool, but whatever the tool you are following, the product owner enters and descriptions of what is required. Later on, it becomes refined based on the more discussion, and as we talk to the different stakeholder or the developer, clarifying questions, everything comes in. So you refine that product backlog that you selected earlier. So product owner is the person who is responsible for the product. He or she is completely accountable for any improvement of the product or anything that is related to the product. Product goal is actually the vision of the product that you are going to targeting a customer. So product goal is set by generally the product owner itself, and he generally does the study for the market and comes up with the best possible features that can product have. So that is all included in the product goal. Ready, so when the product backlogs are ready, that can actually be part of the sprint. It is better to have it ready before the sprint, but sometimes it is not possible. So you should have your product backlog item ready for introducing in the sprint. So it is a shared understanding by the product owner and the developer regarding preferred level of description in the product backlog item to introduce at the planning meeting. So before the planning meeting, it is recommended that product owner clarifies anything and groom the story and become it ready to include it in a sprint. Refinement is the same as the product backlog refinement. So more you know, more you update the story so that there is no doubt of the end result of a particular work completed, which is part of a story or task in the sprint. So Scrum is a lightweight framework that helps people, teams, organizations generate value through adaptive solutions. So it is a framework and it solves the complex problems. Scrum board, a physical board to visualize information for and by the Scrum team. So this can be used like a Jira is a very common tool. Like I'm just giving a reference to Jira. So if you follow your, like if you put your stories and if you start your sprint in Jira, then you will have a board, and every day in the daily Scrum meeting, the developers will follow their or that move their stories from to do to in progress to ready for testing or in even completion. So there are different stage in a Scrum board. The stories can move along with that. So Scrum Guide is nothing but the Scrum Guide itself, the book. The Scrum Master is the person in the Scrum team who guides the team organizations and help or facilitate the developers to work in the agile environment. So Scrum Master is actually the big supporter of the team. He does not dictate the team, but he helps team understand the Scrum values. He facilitated any meeting or time boxed event that is there in the Scrum. He is the person who is responsible for that. So Scrum team is self-organizing team. It includes the product owner, Scrum Master, as well as the developer. There are 3 roles defined in the Scrum team. Anybody else are not part of the Scrum. One is Scrum Master, product owner, and the developers. Scrum values, a set of fundamental values for qualities underpinning the Scrum framework: commitment, focus, openness, respect, and courage. Self-managing. So anytime you will hear this self-managing story, it is mostly related to the developers. In traditional cases, we see the project manager coming in, the higher management coming in to get the status for each and every developers. Scrum is totally different. Scrum, the developer themselves are responsible for all the works in a sprint. Nobody gets or asks the status except the developer themselves. So they distribute the work, they are responsible to complete the work, they are also responsible for testing, and they are also responsible for keep that product ready for release, or whatever the increment they are doing at the part of the sprint ready for release. So sprint is a time boxed event. It is like generally 2 weeks to 4 weeks. And within that time, developers select that how many stories they want to achieve or complete, so that a specific product increment can be done within that period. Sprint backlog. So it comes from the product backlog. So product owner, as I said, the product owner creates a product backlog from that, from the requirement, or you can say that use cases from by talking to the business or the stakeholders as well as the market studies. So product owner can come up with the product backlog. So after the product backlog gets refined and developers are comfortable to take it in a sprint, product owner also generally ordered the list in the product backlog I Next topic is sprint goal. It is a short expression of purpose of the sprint. So whatever the stories you select in a particular sprint, that together gives you the sprint goal. So or other way, if you set a sprint goal that what you need to achieve, and then you select the stories that to achieve that particular goal. Sprint planning, this happens, this is Scrum event, it happens within 8 hour time box, and in this time you decide that what is your capacity, if anybody is going to leave in that during the sprint time frame, or what are the stories you need to select, if the ordered list are there, if that stories are clear or not, you just talk about that and then finally select in the sprint and you start the sprint. Sprint retrospective happens at the end of the sprint. So during this meeting, it is solely for the sprint team only. So there are no external team members are allowed in this meeting. So retrospective happens to identify any process improvement. So generally, the idea of the sprint retrospective is developers go over any improvement they think that needs to be done. They put it that in a product backlog, and then they take it on the next sprint or the following sprint, whatever they feel that needs to be. So that gives the entire team an improvement opportunity by following a better process over the time. So sprint review, this comes at the end of the sprint. Whatever the stories are completed successfully, that is showcased to the stakeholder, and it is a way of getting the early feedback, so that if the external or the stakeholder has any views about the product, any improvement ideas, they capture that in the sprint review and then put the stories back to us product backlog, so that the next sprint or any other sprint they can include those improvement opportunities as a part of the product. Stakeholder are any person who has an interest on that product. It can be any senior management, it can be a user of the product, it can be any external architect who are deciding on that architecture of the product. So anybody who has direct or indirect relations as the stakeholder for the product. Technical debt, it is very important. You will hear many times about the technical debt. It happens when you don't follow a process, you don't do the right way of things and rush to complete it. What happens if you can complete a task very fast, but at the end when you go to the production you come up with so many defects that maintenance is a nightmare. So technical debt is very bad thing actually, and you need to follow always the definitions of done and then right process to reduce the technical debt of the product. The values, when there are 5 values actually in the Scrum. Those are commitment, courage, focus, openness, and respect. So Scrum team should be committed to their work. They should have a courage to take that ownership. They should be focused to complete the work. They should be open. There should be nothing hidden from the stakeholders or anyone who has interest on the right things. So it should be very open, and it should have an individual. Everybody should respect each other. Velocity, it is optional, but this is the way. There is a chart called velocity chart. The way we can, the internal team member only can measure their velocity is that, let's say you selected 5 stories and each of the stories are 5 points. So now in 2 weeks time you can complete 25 story point. Now exact similar stories, if you over the time, if you can complete 6 stories of 5 point each, so you will complete 30 stories. So now you're from 25 to 30, your velocity is actually increasing. But if you take a sum of or average of 5 different sprint and you come up, okay, you are completing a story between 25 to 35, so your velocity would be kind of 30, and over the time you can measure your velocity is increasing or decreasing. So it is solely for the team members only, internal Scrum team only. It is not for the higher management. The main reason, because of the main reason is that story pointing itself is a relative process. So every team can point a story based on their understanding. There is no fixed rule that okay, this is exactly this definitions of a story, you will get 5 points or 8 points. So it is based on the team member how to point that stories, and so and everybody is following on that particular team a similar standard, then you can only measure the velocity is increasing or decreasing. So that is all for today. I will see you in the next video. Please, if you like, and then you